Hi, welcome to this Accofina tutorial on personal finance and wealth management. Today we're covering the 6 steps of financial planning and advice. Okay, since this is about financial planning and possible investments, I have to have this disclaimer. Please pause it, have a read, but in the most briefest terms, this video is not giving personal advice. It's meant to provide factual information for educational purposes, and we do not know your personal circumstances and financial goals, and thus this video shouldn't be taken as constituting professional advice. But please have a read. Okay, for an introduction, we're going to ask why you should be interested in this video tutorial. Now, there are 2 groups who may be interested, whether you're a financial planning or a financial advice client, or whether you're a financial planning student or an actual financial planner or advisor. So if you're a client or thinking about becoming a client of financial advice, it's helpful to know the process and what's going on behind the scenes and what's going to occur when you approach the financial advisor. And financial advisors should love having well-prepped clients. So you may go there with more of your eyes open if you understand this video tutorial. It also may help you assess the quality of advice you're receiving. Because after all, clients should be the center of all advice. Your typical bad advisor may just be a financial product salesman or a hawker, just basically trying to get you to buy anything, and it doesn't really apply to your circumstances or your individual needs. A good advisor will be a professional with his or her client's interests as their top priority, and they should use similar steps to what we're going to outline to tailor your advice. Now, if you're just a financial planning student or you're a financial planner or advisor, this video may solidify your knowledge, just be a bit of a refresher, or possibly just give you another perspective on how someone else describes these steps. Okay, the 6-step financial planning process. We're going to go through each of the following steps, but here's the graph. You've got the financial planner, which is on the outer ring, the blue ring, and they go through each of the 6 steps, and then we have the client at the center. You'll see that arrows seem to be going everywhere, and the idea behind there is that the client is the center of advice, and that it's not necessarily a linear process, step 1, step 2, step 3. Sometimes you've got to go back a step to fill a gap, or forward a step to if you come across some sort of information that's in a later step. But the key idea is that the client is at the center of advice. You put the clients at the center, and the planner will move back and forward in and out of that diagram to get the most appropriate advice for the client. After all, this is about the client and giving them the most appropriate advice. Not necessarily whether you hit your KPIs or what your boss wants or what you want. It's always about putting the client first. Okay, so step 1, collecting client information. The very first thing a financial advisor will do is collect both financial and non-financial data about you or another client. They'll get information on your income, your assets, your liabilities, your employment status, your household and living status, your family, children, parents, sister, a whole bunch of family stuff, whether you have any insurance, your retirement savings details, and a whole variety of information. Can be quite in depth, and often this is an important part. The better picture they can paint, the more appropriate advice they can give you. Now, the tool they use is called a fact find, and it could just be a paper form or a questionnaire that you fill out either in front of the advisor or you take it home prior to having your first meeting. There's also modern technology collection tools. This is where you have maybe apps or web apps that could collect some of this data on behalf of the planner, or it could just be a straightforward chat with the planner and while they take notes about your details. And finally, the advisor or planner, I use those terms interchangeably if you haven't picked that up already. So financial planning, financial advice, often used interchangeably. And then often the planner will have to work with other people in organizations. So for instance, they may have to talk to the client accountant, the current financial product providers that the client is using, and even the client's lawyers. This may be, for instance, if there's trusts involved, or businesses involved, or other estate planning issues, or there are other investments or financial products already in place. So the client may not know details offhand, or have ready access to them, or not know the depth of detail required to do appropriate advice. So they'll get authority from the client to contact these providers, and the advisor may seek out clarification from these other professionals. And in one sentence, it's about getting the full lay of the land prior to moving forward with the client. Okay, step 2, determine the client objectives and goals. And this is probably the most important step. After all, why are the clients coming to you for advice in the first place? And remember, it's about what they, the clients, want, not what you, the planner, think is the best for them. So individual circumstances provide individual solutions. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and different risk profiles and objectives will lead to different people having a variety of best situations. So what's best for me is not best for you, which is not best for your brother or sister, which is not best for the guy or girl down the road. The advisor will try to elicit your short, medium, and long-term goals. For instance, the client may say, or you may say, I'm going to buy a house within 5 years. Or, I want to make sure I have a comfortable retirement. Or, I want to be able to go on an international holiday at least every 3 years. And for the planner, this can sometimes involve turning motherhood statements into specific goals. So for example, there was that, I want to have a comfortable retirement. Well, then the planner will have to work out what a comfortable retirement is for this particular client. Perhaps it's a certain level of income in retirement, perhaps it's having the mortgage paid off, perhaps it's having a useful estate plan in place. You often have to kind of draw out particular goals from more generalized statements that the clients give you. Because often, with the general motherhood statements, the clients don't have the particular knowledge to be able to articulate the goals that the specialist planner could often articulate themselves. And they can provide that information on to the client once it's been sorted out. And finally, advisors should use these goals to tailor their advice. And in one sentence, where do the clients want to go? Okay, step 3 is performing a gap analysis to identify potential financial problems. So we know the client situation from step 1, we know the goals of the client from step 2, but are there misalignments or problems reconciling the two? In other words, are the goals unrealistic based on the current situation? As an extreme example, the client might say, I have a goal to have my own private island off the coast of New York or the eastern seaboard. And then we look at their details, or the planner looks at their details, and it just may not be a realistic goal. So what the planner has to do is discuss the gap analysis with the clients and seek agreement on how to resolve the gap. And generally, there are only 4 solutions to resolving any gap. First of all, the client can change or drop a goal or expectation. For example, actually, I don't need that island off the eastern seaboard. Secondly, they can delay the expected goal achievement, i.e. give them more time. For example, okay, I don't really need to buy that island off the eastern seaboard within the next 3 years, but if I work really hard and plan really well, I'd like to, maybe get it in 40 years, which may make it more realistic. And again, that example, I'm going to change that example. That's too out there. I might make it a bit more. I might make my examples a bit more realistic. How about that? Thirdly, you might cut your expenditure or your current lifestyle, and this would allow for greater savings or investments. For example, the client may say, okay, I want to buy a property in Los Angeles by the time I retire, little 3-bedroom house that I can enjoy my retirement. And I'm willing to go without coffees until my retirement and upgrade my car far less regularly. Any expenditure cuts that lead to greater savings I can put into investments, and that will make my real estate goals more realistic. And finally, the client can move up the risk spectrum with savings and investments. That is, they can take on greater risk for higher returns. And it's important that if this option is chosen, then it's vital that the new risk level is conveyed and understood by the client. What specifically that's saying, option 4, is that if you have a investment that's returning perhaps 6 to 8% per annum, So perhaps a low risk index fund, and that may lead to a gap in your gap analysis. Then you may actually take on more risk and perhaps go for a fund or a stock that promises to return 18 or 20%, and that may make your goals more achievable. However, aiming for 18 or 20% per year will probably involve a lot more risk. So those new risk levels have to be conveyed and understood, and is one of the 4 options you can try and resolve a gap. And the one sentence: are there any issues getting from here to there? What should we do then? Step 4 is about developing the financial plan, and this is where the planner goes away and works on the plan based on the previous steps. The plan needs a level of depth and detail to allow clients to make an informed choice about whether to proceed, and there is some skill required because you need the plan to be clear and succinct, and also include a level of detail to allow an informed choice. So it's a careful trade-off there. You can't overwhelm them with a document the size of War and Peace, but you can't make it too brief that it doesn't allow all the adequate information to allow an informed choice. And while the actual content of a plan may be dictated by regulation, plans in general may include a scope of advice, what the current client position is and their background, what the client goals and objectives that were elicited and outlined, issues and gaps were identified, the recommended trade-off, and how these gaps were going to be resolved and agreed to. There probably will be the actual recommended strategies and solutions, possibly product recommendations providing compliance and disclosure requirements are met. There should be a summary of risks and benefits if the advice is implemented, and finally there should be the advantages and disadvantages of this particular advice when compared to alternative strategies that could be implemented. And in the one sentence is, what should the clients do to achieve their financial goals? The 5th step is to present the advice and implement the plan. So now it's time for the financial planner. He's got his document, he's got to go back to the clients, have a meeting with the full plan document, any appendices, charts, diagrams, and present the plan to the clients. The advisor can answer questions that the clients may have, resolve any concerns that the clients may have, fill in any gaps the clients may have, and make sure that they understand everything. It's important that the clients understand all the pros and cons of implementing this particular advice strategy. And I highlighted the word, or all caps the words, understand there. You can't just hand them a 20-page document and say, there are the risks, and let me tell you about all the good stuff. You have to make sure they understand it, as opposed to just going over their head or expecting them to understand it without the technical background. After this, the planner will seek client approval, find out whether they want to proceed or not, and then implement the plan if they do. Implementing the plan involves collating and completing all the paperwork for the plan and the providers and any partners you're working with. You have to work with service or product providers to put everything in place. And finally, the planner will communicate with clients, keep them updated about how the plan is being implemented, and provide guidance on what is needed from the clients and when it is needed, such as signed documents or funds and so forth. And in one sentence, here's the advice. Do you want to pursue this plan? Okay, let's do it. And finally, we have step 6. This shouldn't be underestimated. This is the plan review. This is both formally and informally. There needs to be communication between advisor and client. The advisor has to provide update on how the products and investments are performing throughout the period. The advisor has to provide updates on how the overall plan is performing and tracking towards financial goals. After all, taking in place all the strategies, whether it's insurance or investments or savings or changes in budgets, is it kind of going to meet those eventual financial goals that the client came to see the planner for? Is it tracking towards being able to afford that international holiday every 3 years, that property in LA by the time that client retires, and so forth? The planner also has to assess how the client is managing the plan. For example, are they comfortable with any behavioral changes required? That may mean checking mate, how's life going without all that coffee? And how's that old car running? Like, are you coping okay? Is this plan still achievable for you to afford that LA property? And that sort of thing. And finally, and importantly, the planner has to seek information on any circumstances that may have changed. That's very, very important. A plan is not a static document. Or actually, a better way of putting it, a plan is best applicable for the time that it's written in. Like a snapshot. But as time passes, things for the client's circumstances will change. A couple may have a baby, a employee may lose their job or change work types. A whole variety of different things can muck up a plan, and these kind of updates have to be provided to the planner so the planner can adjust or update the plan and advice. And if there's been anything dramatic which kind of blows the plan out of the water or makes it not applicable or appropriate for the following year or the following 2 years, then the planner and advisor may possibly even have to restart the 6-step planning process again. And in one sentence, how's the plan going? Anything changed? And are the financial goals tracking well? Okay, we're back to the 6-step financial planning process. Remember the key ideas. The client is at the center of advice. This isn't about the planner. It isn't about what the planner wants. It's about what the client wants and how they can achieve their objectives. And those 6 steps we just covered aren't always linear. Life isn't that simple. It's not like you go, oh, we finished step 2, let's move on to step 3. They've been put into those 6-step silos for simplicity, but sometimes to make it easier for the client when they're at the center is that you kind of have to jump around and fill in gaps or move forward and so forth. But you should always be touching base with the client at the center to make sure everything is appropriate. And there's the graph. And hopefully, after that video, that graph doesn't look like a crazy, mad bunch of arrows and circles anymore, but it makes a bit more sense. Step 1, collect the info, and so forth. And around it goes until it starts again. Alright, conclusion and wrap up. What did we cover today? We covered the 6 steps of financial planning and why knowing them is useful. We looked at the 6 steps via a diagram. Then we went through step 1, collect client information. Step 2, determine client objectives and goals. Step 3, perform a gap analysis and identify financial problems. Step 4, develop the financial plan. Step 5, present the advice and implement the plan. Step 6, plan review. And that is the full standardized 6 steps of financial planning and advice. Okay, that is it. I hope it helped. Best of success. There are your congratulatory fireworks. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. You can click on the button that'll soon appear, or you can watch another one of my tutorials now. That'd be great. Or even just give me a like if you enjoyed the video, or a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video. Finally, feel free to comment below if anything needs clarification, or if you just want to say hello. And that is it. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.